On this episode of AV Week, we honor the passing of FSR co-founder Bill Fitzsimmons and take a look at where the next generation of entrepreneurs and scientists are going to come from. Also looking at the NEC Display Solution and Sharp joint venture. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 481, recorded Friday, November 6th, 2020. Light my candle.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
and by Crestron.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright, your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, a fantastic industry end user now. Her name is Dawn Mead. She works at a place that we can't mention, but she's somewhere in the United States. How are you, ma'am?
Very good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is Charmaine Torella. I can say where she works for. She works from our buddies over at Verix. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Also with us is Mr. Chris Bach, the only person on the left coast this week, but that's okay. He works for Extron. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be back again.
Absolutely. And Extron's one of our underwriters and one of our supporters. We thank them. Last but not least, he don't work for nobody, so he can say whatever he damn well pleases. His name is Bradford Penn. Good God, watch out. How are you, sir?
Bite my shiny metal ass. Oh, sorry. Was that the wrong phrase? But I've been wanting to say that. I'm doing well.
Glad you found an avenue.
It's been a good day. You know, the highlight of the day is this. The second highlight of the day is I have Starbucks.
I have dark matter coffee, and my new favorite brew is called Unicorn Blood. And we'll talk about that later.
I've got hydrogen oxide.
Yeah. So
I guess I'm boring.
we mentioned the fact that obviously Bradford been with AVNation for a long time, but he is currently unemployed. By the time this post, you'll have about a day or two to figure out what he's doing next, and he is doing something next. He's not quite old enough to retire yet. So I'm just
get back here. I'll hit you with my cane.
I'm just saying. I said you're not old enough to retire yet. You can hit me around the first. Huh?
Let's move on. So let's talk about the AVNation succession plan, because unfortunately that did come up this week.
It actually did, and the reason for that.
Favorite people.
Are you going to do this, or am I going to do this?
No, despite what Craig wants, I won't take over. I was just giving you a segue.
That. So yes, the top story actually comes from our website. This week, the AV industry lost a legend. Bill Fitzsimmons of FSR passed away at the age of 89. Fitzsimmons was the F in FSR and was the co-founder and chairman. He, along with Jan Sandry and Charles Rodriguez, started the company in 1981. Actually, Bradford, we'll start with you. What can we learn from the life and times of Mr. Bill Fitzsimmons, spending, more than 40 or 50 years inside the industry and spending the good chunk of the last 40 years at FSR and helping to guide that company?
The first thing is obviously we can determine from this cancer sucks. So that goes without saying. The second thing is the fact he actually did have a succession plan, and he stepped away around 10 years ago. And to me, that's actually one of the things that is impressive, is he stepped away, had a succession plan, succeeded to a woman and signed it over to a woman, which when he did was not a hugely popular, wasn't something that automatically occurred. But the fact that it had been planned, it wasn't oh no, something's going wrong. It was I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to go do something else. Yeah. Let me smoothly hand off the reins. It's one of those things where I've seen other companies that have people's names in it, and it hasn't been as smooth, either because of being sold or through unfortunate passings. If we look at Rain, what was it, 3 years ago now, when they got purchased, Rain went away. It wasn't a succession plan, but part of that was because the Rain founders wanted to retire. So I'm very happy that FSR is still around because there was a succession plan. I also think it's something that many of us don't prepare for. For all the lightness of this, of being unemployed, I spent 2 months writing down everything I knew so that when this goes back on, or when someone else comes and takes my job, they can know what to do. So there is succession, but most people don't sit to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge we have. Institutional knowledge is going to be lost. And there's a combination of writing it down, but also of the pass the torch before it's too late, which I'm very impressed that Bill did. Now, also just from a pure, this is what FSR has done. The products themselves have definitely been amazing. You know, I've used them. They are a sponsor of ours. I'm very happy they are, but I've used them for little problem solvers for years. It sounds funny, the surface mount one gang plate that's slanted at an angle to be a control system, to be a control interface. There's no one else who makes something like that for under $150. And I'm like, they understand the market. They got it right. And a lot of that's Jan, a lot of that's a few of our other friends. But the fact that Bill had planned and done the transition ahead of time, I think is very telling. And he got out while he was still able to have fun. You know,
Yeah.
as you and I joke of the, I'm not quite ready to retire yet. I hope Tim and I aren't still doing this in 20 years, because by that point, I'm hoping, other people take over and I'm retired.
I had to do the math there. Yeah, 20 years sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Charmaine, I don't want to make too much of the geography of this. However, you work for Varex, New York, New Jersey area. New Jersey seems to be a hotbed of entrepreneurs and crazy scientists. And when I can personally go back 100 plus years, when you got Edison and in there, and obviously Tesla in and around there, you've got a number of other ones, especially in the AV industry, who happen to be in that area. Obviously, Bill and Jan and Rodriguez was part of that. Where is our next generation of crazy scientists? Where is our next generation of AV entrepreneurs? Where, looking at, whether it's technology or it is a business person or whatever, is it geography? Is that New York, that tri-state area, the New York, New Jersey area, really that fertile for that area? Or is it really just kind of that's where the population was at the time, but we expanded in the last 100 years or so, and there's other areas.
Yeah, you just said it. That's where the population was at the time. The hotbed of Jersey, where the mad scientists, and going back to FSR, amazing company, amazing team, because they truly are not mad scientists, but the right scientists when it comes to their solutions. And many times as an integrator, FSR is who I fell back on, as well as my clients, to be a problem solver. Like Brad said, okay, we need it exactly this way. They understand the concept of it's bespoke, the system, and you can't just make everything and it's going to fit all. That's not their focus. They are custom tailors in terms of what they produce, which makes them interesting. The good news is they are still breeding that within their environment, that type of plan, which is amazing. So there's new people, different people in FSR today that are coming out with some new interesting things to make solutions that are now evolving from AV to IT work better and a little more seamlessly for customers and integrators and solve some problems. But I see the talent of that spread out now. It could be in California. I see California coming up with a lot of scientists within that region. One of them on this call right now as we speak, Chris. We also see other places outside the United States, right, in Europe, that are coming up with different things. So it's become really global. Everyone in the world has taken the examples from companies like FSR's and said, hey, we could do this, but we also have this. Let's put it together and see what we have. So it's now becoming like you can have someone in China coming out with a new control system called JIDO or in another area and just, change the game. So the game is really quickly evolving globally.
All right.
Come from anywhere right now.
All right, Mr. Bach. Charmaine did mention the fact I was going to get to the West Coast crazy scientist, and that would be your owner, Andrew Edwards. Although, just for the record, Andrew comes from the East Coast.
Yep,
but he has been
he's an import.
on the West. Well, he's been in California long enough. He's a Californian. I mean, he's got a ranch
83.
there. Yeah, that's a minute, right?
Yep.
So, talk about it from a perspective of somebody who works for, one of these entrepreneurs, one of these cowboys, but also, kind of where you see the next generation coming from.
Well, that was a beautiful setup, Tim. Those are actually the thoughts that I'd come up with a couple of days ago when I was looking at the article. I, first of all, would just also say, I think on behalf of all of us here, that our thoughts go out to Bill's family and anybody that's still working or worked at FSR. I never had the pleasure of meeting Bill. He sounds like an awesome stand-up guy, class act. And he reminds me, the thoughts that I'd come up with as I was thinking about it, of my experience at Extron, right? You got the right folks at the right place at the right time with the right product, kind of like Charmaine was saying, and you set up something large, but you can still stay, in some cases, ours included, private, and keep that family feel. This is my 20th year with the company. This is my first full-time job. I was 21 when I started. I was the young buck for a while. And next year or whenever, I'll be able to say they've had me half my life. My wife, I met her at Extron 19 years ago. She's still there. There's been an awful lot of marriages at Extron, ironically. Just the right people somehow get through the filter of HR and wind up staying there a really long time. So I think what's interesting today, too, is there's so many acquisitions and conglomerates and mergers that companies like Extron and FSR can stay true for decades and just steer the ship forward and have what people want and listen to what people ask for and give them what they want and take all that into account. So I'm pretty fortunate. Our little industry is still small, has a family feel. Don't burn your bridges. The people that you talk to someday, you'll talk to some other way down the road, maybe with a different business card. But I think that's one of the best things that we have going for us, is this little cool world that we're in is still the way it is. Relationships and all.
Donna, we'll end with you on this one, both from an overarching standpoint of working with FSR, the number of years that you've been in the industry, but also how do we encourage this, right? Chris made a very good point about some of the acquisitions and the conglomerates that have kind of come together, and we're going to talk about one of them most likely by the end of this show. But how do we encourage that entrepreneurial spirit within our industry, right? Certainly there are incubators that encourage it in the app world and the IT world. How do we as a community get around folks that have the chutzpah and have the wherewithal to kind of stick their neck out and try something new?
Well, I will say one thing. It absolutely comes down to all of us working together. We have to let people know that we're a thing, the whole evangelize the industry so people know to play in our space. But I think the best way to encourage potential entrepreneurs in our space is to encourage the ones that are starting. The Innovation Pavilion, or whatever the heck they call it at Infocom every year when we're there in person, is one of the coolest places on the floor. And I don't know how many people actually go there. But it's, tiny little booths, don't cost them anywhere near what Chris and the folks at Extron or some of the big companies, the Sonys and the whoever's are paying for the mega booths. But it lets them show their new, unique product, their incredible solution. Some of the guys that started out in the little Innovation Pavilion are now among the big guys. Yeah. Some of them never get any further. So, encouraging the ones that are trying, I think, is a big step. Encouraging younger people getting into the industry, like the NSCA Inspire program, or Ignite program. Those sorts of things are wonderful. But I'm going to go back to something Bradford said. And, I don't want to encourage him thinking he's the wise sage of the industry.
He is the oldest one on this call. I just want to point that out.
But he did point out something that I've encountered at my own company, Redacted, just this week. And that's, we can't hoard knowledge. And, so many people in our industry and in the IT industry adjacent to us and overlapping with us, we're too big of fans of J.R.R. Tolkien, I guess, because we're all sitting on our little hoard of knowledge like smog, and nobody's going to get, our precious. And you can't work like that. When I came into the company I'm at now, I'm in charge of AV for an entire sector worldwide with my boss. My boss is in charge, but I'm like in charge of designing the AV for the entire sector worldwide. But until this point, there hasn't been anyone in charge. So each little IT group and each little facilities group came up with their own solutions, and they don't want to let go of their kingdom. They don't want to stay in their lane because they do have real job responsibilities aside from the ones they've taken over the years. But they don't want to say, oh, we have an expert now, we have a team now that's going to come in and standardize across the sector. They just say, no, this is my kingdom and this is my knowledge, and I'm not going to tell you how it worked. And that sort of idea, it's a problem at end users, but I know it's a problem out there in the manufacturer world, in the integrator world. You can't guard your job by guarding your knowledge.
It's not a zero-sum game, all bad for the same team.
Yeah. What's that expression? A candle doesn't diminish its own light by lighting other candles.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the knowledge in our industry. We have to share that. We have to train the young guys coming up. We have to share with colleagues and coworkers. Except for proprietary stuff, Chris, you manufacturers share with your other manufacturers and innovators. That shared pool of knowledge, the general knowledge, is what sparks those ideas that say, that's great info, but what if we did this?
Rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were the fly on the wall in the earlier call I had today. That's exactly right. And especially when we go back to Mr. Fitzsimmons, right? He shared the knowledge.
Yeah.
Why? And I said earlier today, development internally, which leads to helping you be more competitive, which leads to longevity and succession.
Right.
That's the track, right? And that's what has to start happening more, because the talent, for us to get talent in AV is harder and harder. We have a lot of people competing for our talent all the time, and not just other competition. We have manufacturers, vendors, other partners in other sectors. They're coming for our, coming for our talent. And then it's going to, the Fitzsimmons of the world, they pass away. And if they don't, develop this talent and bring them in now and pass that in, then it's going to be a deficit for our industry.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that is, as we look into the next year, the next 18 months, passing along that education, that knowledge is going to be imperative, regardless of which sector of the industry you're in, whether it's residential, commercial, or digital signage. You have to pass that along.
And one last thing, Tim,
Yep.
Mr. Fitzsimmons is, rest in peace. He is an example of how to do this, not just with setting the succession plan with Jan Sandry and the rest of the company, but after he stepped down as head of FSR. He didn't just go off in a fishing boat or go
chairman,
learn to crochet. He stayed on as chairman. He came to every InfoComm and every big show that he could come to, and he kept developing his knowledge and sharing his knowledge. And who knows, maybe him meeting some of those Innovation Pavilion people sparked a new idea for him, and he talked to his folks. That's the kind of thing you need. Step aside, make plans, but don't give up, and just keep working at it.
Thanks so much for watching this first segment of AV Week. To check out the rest of the episode for free, click on the link below or go by the website, avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv.